MuseScore. Welcome to the MuseScore Café. So this is my weekly series that I do on Wednesdays where I talk about some aspect of making MuseScore, and there's usually some particular topic that we have going that I'll talk about. And today is kind of a special episode. It's the one we do the first Wednesday of the month, and it's an Ask Me Anything session. So they're always usually pretty fast-paced, and I do my best to keep up, and feel free to keep reminding me in the chat if I've missed a question that I need to come back to, but I do my best to answer what I can. I've pinned up to the top of the chat the link to my Mastering MuseScore School. This is where you can go for my complete online course, which is your best resource for learning all about MuseScore, as well as my music theory courses, harmony, counterpoint, etc. Some great resources there, so highly recommend that you check it out and support what I do here. But I am definitely looking forward to getting into some of the questions that I see here coming up already. And so without further ado, let's get started. All right, everyone. So thanks as always for checking in and giving me some sense of where people are coming from. That's always good to know. And yes, those of you who know that I'm in Denver, it's very snowy here. But Wednesdays, I don't typically go into Regis, the university where I teach. So it is closed, but it doesn't affect me. Tomorrow, if it's still closed, then I'll be doing my music masterclass from my office here rather than from school. But as it is, nope, I did manage to get into my office today. It's only a mile from the house. So looking to see, I saw at least one or two questions here. Okay, so grace notes. All right, so the very first question that I see here is about grace notes. So by the way, before I do anything else, I do want to show you that, because I think I've pointed this out before last week, but I've recently customized my own main workspace. I call it my editing workspace, and I've customized the toolbars to only have the things on it that I actually need, because everything else I use shortcuts for. I use a shortcut, for selecting durations and selecting voices and everything. So I removed all that business from my toolbars to kind of simplify things so they all fit in one row. But for the purpose of these demonstrations, I am going to switch to my Café workspace, which is the one that I can just play around in. So the first thing I always like to do when I'm doing this is reset it to make sure everything's all kind of at the default settings. And then if I end up customizing this workspace as part of what we do today, then I can reset it again. So what I want to do is start off talking about grace notes, and what I'm going to do is there are different kinds of grace notes, and there's basically three of them. And so I'm going to talk about each one and show how they're used, what they're good for, and what the differences are. So I'm going to enter some half notes, just so we have a starting place for this. If I add the main type of grace note from the grace notes palette is this one here. It looks like an eighth note and it has a slash through it. This is called an Atchakatura. I think I'm pronouncing that right, although I can't swear to it. So if I add that, and this is the one that has a just the slash key is the keyboard shortcut for. So if I select this note and do either click in the palette or select a note here and press the slash key, which reminds me I need to turn on my key logger. There we go. When I press the slash key, it automatically enters a grace note. This is the thing that most people think of as a grace note. This is the really fast note. Now, of course, in real life, you would almost never have the grace note be the same pitch as the note you just entered. So the normal thing that I would do is if I'm in note input mode, I might enter my E. I then might press the slash to add a grace note, and then I would use the arrow keys to change the pitch of that note. So now, if I enter this, I'm going to hear DE. So that kind of really fast ba-dum is the normal kind of grace note that most people think of when we add grace notes. It's got a slash through the stem and it shows as an eighth note regardless of the actual duration of things. It's just going to be as fast as possible. So if you, for instance, I'm going to go back into note input mode here and just enter another half note here. If I enter my grace note, and I really want to enter two eighth notes, maybe I want to enter E, F, G as grace notes. So I've entered one, and I actually forget which order they go in, so I'm going to find out. I'm going to hit the arrow key to turn it into an E. Now I'm going to enter another grace note by pressing slash again. And it looked like it entered it in front of the one I just entered. So now I know I should have entered this as a G. It doesn't really matter, but I'm just using the cursor to move between them, and now I've got an F, and now if I hit the slash again, it's going to give me another F that I can then hit the down arrow and get an E. So just by repeatedly pressing slash or repeatedly pressing the palette button. So here's a G, I can change it to an A, click it again, and get a G, click it again, down arrow to get an F. So that's how you would enter multiple grace notes. Now, in some cases, if you've got multiple grace notes, it can, subjectively speaking, seem better if instead of showing a single beam as if they were eighth notes, we might show multiple beams. We might show them as 16th notes. So just change their duration with the toolbar. So I'm using the toolbar because I can, but of course, I usually use a shortcut. I would just press 3 to change it into a 16th note. So that's how you would enter a series of grace notes. Now, if you want a grace chord, like if I want to press E and C simultaneously as a grace note in here, I'll enter one grace note with a slash and then use the arrow keys to move it down to C. And then I will do the usual way of using the keyboard to enter a chord, which is Shift plus letter name. So Shift plus E will now build a chord, a C and an E together. I don't think there is a way to build a grace note chord using the mouse only. This might be one of the few operations in MuseScore. This and the change enharmonic spelling command, I think I mentioned last week in one of my sessions, was another command that there is no mouse way to do it. It's a command J. Like if I press J right now, it'll respell that E as F flat. And then press it again, and I get D double sharp. Press it again, I get E. That cycling, that J command, is the shortcut. The keyboard shortcut J is the only way to do that. Similarly, to build a grace note chord, that's the only way to do it. So this is the main type of grace note, and that's how you'd enter multiple ones and enter chords. But I do want to talk about what the other grace notes are, because the other grace notes are special. So the first type are the appoggiaturas. The appoggiaturas are the ones without slashes that come before a note. These are not grace notes at all in the traditional way you might think of a grace note. If I add in front of this E, I'll select the E and then add this grace note. And then I'll change it to a D. This is not going to play ba-dum, it's going to play do-dum. This is a Baroque ornament. It was used a lot in the Baroque if the E was your actual chord tone and D was what's called an appoggiatura. It's a non-chord tone that resolves by step. It was not meant to be played fast. It takes exactly half the value of the main note. So when I do this, it basically sounds like quarter notes. Boo-dum. Even if I notate it as a 16th note. Well, let me undo that. If I enter a 16th note appoggiatura, it doesn't matter how you notate it, it's going to take half the note value. That's how appoggiaturas work. That's the definition of a Baroque appoggiatura. So the reason it shows them with different notation, with different durations, is it is traditional to notate it with the one that's correct. So if I wanted to put an appoggiatura in front of a half note, normally you would use the quarter note version. So I would add this guy here, the one that looks like a quarter note, so that it looks like the duration it's going to be. That's the way at least some editors during the Baroque era would have published their music. The last type are the grace notes after, and this is meant basically for trills. So I'm going to enter a D and then a C, and I'm going to put a trill on that D. Trill, oops, I don't want it on the whole measure, so I double click it and then shift left to shorten that trill. So now it's only over the D. And that's a real sudden dum, which is not normally how we end trills. We usually do this fancy little ending thing. Da do da dum. So I'm just going to enter those as grace notes after. So I come to my grace notes palette here and enter grace notes after. And I'll use 16ths for them. No, I'll use eighth notes. Dum, and I'll enter two of them because I don't remember what order they're going to come in on, and I'll make this one a C. And now we'll hear that little ending. So we heard a da-da-dum at the end. Da, D, 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 C, D, C. So that's the normal Baroque trill. And not just Baroque, classical music in general. But the Appoggiatura is really kind of specific to the Baroque. It's not that that device wasn't used in later music. It's that people ceased thinking it was useful to notate it this crazy way. They just said, no, if you want two quarter notes, just write two quarter notes. Somewhere around 1700s-ish is when late 1700s even, or maybe even 1800s. To be honest, I'm not sure exactly when it fell out of favor, but I think late 1700s is about when it started to fall out of favor to notate appoggiaturas with this funny grace note looking thing. So those are the different types of grace notes. And so these ones for grace notes after are mostly meant for trill endings, but they have occasional other useful things also. So if you've got further follow-up, feel free to ask about that, Peter. But two notes leading to the full notes. And so hopefully that answers questions. But if you've got further ones, feel free to follow up and I'll try to come back. But meanwhile, I'm going to move on. So there was a question about plugins, and I want to make sure I find that. I think it was just how to download them, right? How to download a plugin. So the thing is, the details are going to differ on different operating systems and different browsers. So I can show you I can show you how it works on my system, and you'll have to adjust to say, well, on Windows it works differently than it works on Mac or than it works on Chrome OS, which is what I'm on. But I'm going to show you the basic process. What I'll do is I will go over to MuseScore.org, which is the main site where we download things, and I will go to download in the menu plugins, and I'll post this link into the chat. There we go. So there's where we get our plugins from, and I'm going to download one that I haven't used before because I've got a lot of them already downloaded, and so I figure I might as well do one I don't necessarily already have. And I'm not totally sure, but I know Mirabilis, if you're here, you wrote one based on something I did before that I'd like to try out. I want to try out that beat. I can't remember what it was called. Here's one that looks like someone wrote a plugin to move. Okay, so by default, Atchakaturas get played on the beat. This is, again, kind of the Baroque standard or the classical era standard for it. In modern music, it's often, especially in instruments other than the piano, because on piano, the common thing to do is strike both notes together and then release the grace note, but on other instruments you can't strike both notes together, and in some styles of music it's appropriate to play the grace note before the beat. So I think this is a plugin that automates that. So I'm going to try this one. I'll also try Mirabilis's, but this one, it crashes MuseScore. I'm not I'm not going to try it. I'm afraid of it. So I want to try this one here. So this one is one that got written as a response to a discussion that was in one of these cafes, and it just put in note. It put in numbers by each note to say what beat it came on, and it sounds like a neat idea. So I'm going to do it. So I'm going to click the attachment here, countbeats.qml. And now when I download it, I want to go to a very specific folder. I want to go to not my downloads folder, not my regular scores folder, MuseScore 3 scores. I want to go up a level. I want to go back up to MuseScore 3 plugins. these are where user plugins go, and I'm going to save it here. So countnotebeats.qml. So luckily, as a QML file, that means it's self-contained in one file. This simplifies the process, and it makes it much more similar from operating system to operating system. Some plugins have multiple files, and so they're combined into a zip file. So you have to download the zip, and then you have to know how to unzip a file, because those details differ on every system. But this one is just a QML file, so that actually simplifies my life. And all I'm going to do is save it to my plugins folder. And now that I've downloaded it, I'm going to come back to MuseScore, and I'm going to go to Plugins, Plugin Manager. The plugin manager is where you need to go to tell MuseScore which of the various plugins that you've downloaded you actually want to see in the menu, because you might have a whole lot downloaded and not want to see them all. One reason for that is they do slow down the startup of MuseScore. Every plugin that's part of the menu needs to get loaded when MuseScore starts up. So you might have a lot of them downloaded that you really don't want to be there all the time. That's the reasoning anyhow. So I want to find that one, Count Note Beats, right here, and put a check mark by it. That tells it it's going to show up in the menu now. So, okay, and now it's in the menu. So I'm going to enter some notes now. Boom, doo, doo. Bum, and I'll do a 16th note. Boo, bum, and then a 16th note. Bum, and then a boom, and then let's see what it does. I'm going to select this passage because I don't know that this plugin works on a selection, but I'm going to guess that it probably does. Most plugins do. Now I can go to plugins and hopefully find that thing. Is it under composing tools? Nope. Where is it? Do we see it in here? So already I'm a little stuck. Oh, notes, there it is. So the thing is, some plugins just go into the main menu here. Some plugins install themselves into submenus. And this is good because otherwise you have a really long menu like this. But the plugin itself controls where it gets installed into. You don't control that as the person installing the plugin. The plugin controls that. So unfortunately, that means different plugins have different ideas of how things should be organized, and you might have to go hunting a little bit. But these two plugins both install themselves into the proofreading, the check for parallel fifths and the check harmony rules. The composing tools has mirror intervals, and I think also there's a retrograde plugin that installs itself into there. So I'm going to go to where it says notes, count note beats, and I'll see what happens. Ah, look at that. So what it did is it put numbers on it. 1, 2, 2.5, 3, 4, 4.25, 4.75. So it's using just numbers, right? So if someone wanted to customize this so that instead of 2.5, it said 2 and instead of 4.25, it said 4E, like 4E and that could be done. It could also be done to use, someone was recently talking in the forums about customizing this plugin to use, and someone did actually customize it to use Takadimi. And that's actually a nice thing. I'm gonna just because I can, I just want to go back and see if that Takadimi plugin is in here yet. Looks like it's not in there yet. But the Takadimi plugin uses Takadimi syllables. Ta, di, mi, ta, taka, mi, ta. If I'm doing it right, which I think I am. So it uses those syllables. So anyhow, that's how you get a plugin in, and that's how you use it. So let's see what else I have here. I definitely saw another question about a keyboard. So unfortunately, I can't demonstrate the keyboard process so well here. But yeah, in principle, if that keyboard is a MIDI keyboard, it's probably designed to work with your computer, but if it didn't come with its own driver and you can't find one online, then you might be stuck. I don't know. But most MIDI keyboards do have a built-in driver, and Windows and Mac OS have built-in drivers that can handle most things. So if you plug in that keyboard, turn it on, then start MuseScore. You have to do it in that order. Plug it in, turn it on. I guess you could turn it on, then plug it in. But in any case, you have to do those two things before starting MuseScore. I would recommend plug in first, then turn it on, And when you do that, wait and see if your operating system pops up any dialogues that says now installing driver or whatever. If it doesn't install anything, if it doesn't tell you it's installing anything, then it must be using a pre-installed driver. And then when you start MuseScore, it should just work. But if not, then it's, weird operating system driver stuff that I can't really help with. So, but getting it done in the right order is definitely the important thing here. So my playback volume is low, I'm hearing. That's interesting. I don't think it's set differently than usual, but let me see. It's set where it's usually set, but if I need to play some music, I will do this before. So Francois, you've got a question about the French course and getting help in French. And yeah, unfortunately, I don't speak French, and so I'm not good with this. When you post them to the French course, usually, I'm spacing on her name. Oh gosh, Amandine is pretty good about answering questions posted there. So if you're not getting a question, maybe try posting again. But feel free to ask the question in French here, and maybe someone watching here can translate for me. I know we tried to do that before with a question about images, and I thought we answered it. But if you still have lingering questions, you certainly try again. Okay, so tips on writing are. So I saw something about dots, and I want to make sure I didn't miss something about dots before I get to this. Okay, there it is. How to add P. Oh, it's not about dots. POCP dotted underscore. Oh, okay. Poco a poco, I think is what you're talking about. Okay. I think I understand what you're talking about. If you want to see the text that says poco a poco and it's got some dots and it's really a crescendo, here's how you do it. I'll enter some notes first, and they're always the same notes. I'm going to select the range I want it to apply to, and I'm going to go to the lines palette. And on the lines palette, you're going to see this one that says crescendo line. Let's click that one. And by the way, I'm in this special Café workspace. You might be in the basic workspace. If you're in the basic workspace, you might not see that line by default. You do. Okay, so that one's good. But for most of what I do, a lot of the stuff that I'm showing, like the Grace Notes palette, I think if I open that, it's only got a couple options in it, right? So if you're in the basic workspace, you're not seeing everything there is. Switch to the advanced workspace. Then you get everything in your palettes. But you can just click where it says more. Also, if you're in the basic workspace, you can click more and it will show you the rest of the stuff. But in any case, it's better to switch to advanced. My Café workspace is just a copy of the advanced workspace, and I created it by pressing this plus button. I was in the advanced workspace, press the plus button. And this just gives me a place that now if I want to do any palette customization, I can and don't mess up my advanced workspace. All right, so I've added the crescendo line. Let me do that again. I'll delete it. I select the range. I click the crescendo line. Now, I can come into that line, and I'm going to make the inspector wider so I can see everything. And I want to change the text on it. So it doesn't just say crescendo, it says poco a poco. So what I'm going to do is I got to scroll through here to where it says begin text. And right now it says cresc period. I want to change it to poco a poco. Crescendo. And yeah, if you wanted to say poco a poco and then some dashes and then the crescendo, well, then you would add a few of them. So I could remove the crescendo part and then start a new line here. And now it says poco a poco, dot, 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 crescendo, dot, dot, dot. So you can play with those settings. But anyhow, that's how you do it. You add the crescendo line from the palette and then you use the inspector to kind of customize how and where the text is. Okay, so now there's a question about an arpeggiated chord with either symbol or written out with ties. Okay, so first of all, yes, I see that you're asking about multiple voices, and it is absolutely true that will not work for playback. So if I enter a C in voice 1, and now I switch to voice 2, and I enter an E and a G, I have this chord of 3 notes. If I select that chord and use the articulate, no, it's under arpeggios here. If I enter an arpeggio across those three, I'm going to get two separate arpeggios. So it's maybe hard to tell as fast as that was. You can also control in the inspector how fast that arpeggio gets played. If I turn it down to just 0.5, I think that makes it half as fast. Or maybe it doesn't. To be honest, I so rarely play with this. That might, oops. Did I just close the score? No, I just flipped. All right, let's try this again. Oh, that got faster. So let me try making it a longer value. I guess that's how you do it. Yeah, played the first two notes together and then played a second note. So yeah, if you use multiple voices, the playback doesn't get it the way you expect. So if you're looking for a workaround for that, here's one. I'm going to try this. I've never actually tried it before. I'm going to not put this arpeggio here. I'm going to delete it because it's not helping me. I'm going to take this arpeggio and I'm just going to use Control Arrow to expand it a staff space at a time so that it looks like it's covering. It's not really going to do it, right? It's still not going boo-da-dum, or whatever. Boo-da-dum. I can sing. Not well, but I can sing. So it's not doing it the way we expect, but at least it looks right. Now I'm going to try to get it to actually sound right. It's going to be tricky, but I'm going to try it. I'm going to select this C, and I'm going to turn off its playback. In the inspector, I'm going to uncheck where it says play. Now, I'm going to add another C to this chord. I'm going to press Shift-C to add another chord. Oh, but I'm going to make that one. Notice it expanded the arpeggio, so maybe I didn't need to expand it manually, but I'm not sure, because what I want to do now is make that one invisible. And I'm going to press V. So I'm going to get rid of this arpeggio and re-add it, because now I can see that invisible C that I just added extended automatically. So now it plays the way I want. Unfortunately, I maybe don't want the stem there. So am I stuck? Well, no, not really. I'm going to try another little trick, which is, oops, I didn't mean to press that. I am going to select the voice 2C by control clicking. So if I just click the C, I get voice 1, but if I control click, it selects what's underneath. Now the voice 2C is selected, and I'm going to force it down. I'm going to force it to display right on top of that G. So I'm going to use the fix to line setting for that. Fix to line, and I'm going to move it down to the same line as the G. All right, now I guess I do need to extend this thing after all, so Control up. Now I have something that looks like I want, and I think it's going to sound like I want. Ha! Ha! It's possible. So there you go. I went through that kind of fast, but if you just rewind this later on and watch again, and I think you should be able to get the answer out of it. So the Count Beats plugin currently does decimal numbers. I'm saying someone who wants to edit the plugin could probably edit it to put in ands and e's and uhs and takadimi syllables. But no, I don't think the plugin itself does that right now. I'm saying it would probably be a not difficult edit. So, so there was a question about Roman numerals, and I know I haven't completely answered the arpeggio question. Actually, let me see. I want to find the arpeggio question again. Either symbol or written out with ties. Yeah, that's the other part. So I want to show you how this thing is written out with ties. Often the way we do this is we write like 16th notes, C, E, G, C, and then a full chord, C, E, G, C, and then we tie these 16th notes into that chord. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to select all those 16th notes and then just press the tie button. I so rarely use the tie. Wait a minute. Did I remove the tie button from my toolbar? Oh no, there it is. I was looking for it. It used to just be a plus icon, and now it changed to something that actually looks like a tie. And that changed years ago, but I just use the shortcut, so I'm so used to not looking at it. But there you go. Now, when I pressed it, it automatically did that. So there you go. All right, there was another nice quick question about demonstrating the custom key signature thing. So sure, I'll select a measure where I want a custom key signature. I press Shift K, which is the shortcut to bring up the custom key signature designer. And now I can design my custom key signature. So I think in the newsletter, I talked about one that had a B flat and an F sharp. So there it is. And now if I press the add button here, it adds it to this palette here so that I can reuse it. It hasn't added it to my score yet. So I want to and I want to make sure I do this right. If I now make sure this measure is selected, yes, this measure is selected, and then I click it here in the dialog, it adds it to the score. And you will see that it actually works for playback. If I go in here and go G, A, that's a B flat, right? C, D, E, F sharp, G. So I have now created a, what have I created? I've created nothing. I've created a melodic minor key signature. I think I probably meant to do a harmonic minor, and in the newsletter, that's probably what I did. So probably I created one that also had an E flat. But in any case, that's the process. The microtonal ones don't affect playback, but there is a plugin that will cause them to. All right, so let's keep going. So Graham, you got your QML file and got the message wrong format. Which plugin did you try? And when did you get the message? Did you get the message when you tried to put the check mark in the plugin manager, or did it not show up in the plugin manager? Tell me more about what went wrong, Graham. At what phase of the process did something go wrong? Um, I see some French discussion, and I'm hoping that we've got some stuff being answered there. Okay, so here Dallin is answering. Would like to know where to post a question when we're not listening to the cafe. Oh, the best place is in the community. Go to community.masteringmusescore.com. So I'll post that link here. But actually, if you go to my school, there's a community link at the top of it. But the community is community.masteringmusescore.com. And there's a space there called conversation. So for instance, I'll show you what it looks like. This is what the community looks like if you haven't been there before, but definitely highly recommended. It's totally free to join. And you'll see all these spaces listed on the left. The one that says conversation, that's the space to ask questions about MuseScore or discussion that in any way relates to the MuseScore Cafe. There's also a share and discuss space that relates to the music masterclass. So if you've been participating in that and you want to share some music that I can give feedback on the actual music as opposed to feedback about MuseScore, you post it there under the music masterclass share and discuss space. So that's on Thursdays when I do those. All right, let me keep kind of scrolling through here and see if I've missed something else. So the next thing I see is about modulating in Roman numerals. So to say that G changing to C. So this is tricky. So there's a couple aspects to it. So let me come over here to a spot of the score that's still in C, add some more measures, and I'm going to add some notes. Do I need notes? Not really. I don't know why I entered these notes, but if I do this, whatever, the notes don't need to make sense. So the idea is we're entering Roman numeral analysis, and so I've defined a shortcut for that because I do it a lot, but it's under Add Text Roman numeral analysis. And so you would do that or use the shortcut. Control Shift R is what I've defined. I think I've also defined Control Alt R or Shift Alt R. I forget, but it says Control Shift R. But so now I can enter my original key C, and now I want to enter a colon. But if I try to enter a colon, it On my keyboard and most keyboards, frankly, colon is shift semicolon. Well, semicolon and shift semicolon are the navigation shortcuts. They have been for years. They were that way long before we decided to do Roman numeral analysis. So unfortunately, we didn't want to break, we didn't want to have a whole different set of shortcuts just for Roman numeral analysis. We wanted people to use the ones they were already familiar with. Semicolon moves by beat. Shift semicolon moves backwards by beat. So in order to enter a colon, you can't just press shift semicolon. You'll have to press control shift semicolon. It's the same way when entering lyrics, right? If you want to put a space in the middle of a syllable or a hyphen in the middle of a syllable, it's control space or control hyphen. On a Mac, it's command probably. So now I've got my C1. And then here, maybe I have a 5. But maybe I want to say that this 5 is also the 1 chord in the key of G. So it's possible to do this, but a little tricky. So I'm going to demonstrate it. I may get details wrong, in which case, let me change this note from an F. I'm just going to change this note to a half note because it's going to bother me that the note doesn't fit the harmony I'm about to add. But I'm going to go through the process. Hopefully I'll get it right. And again, it might be a little too fast to really follow, but you can always rewind and watch it later, right? So what I'm going to do is I am now going to enter a second Roman numeral on this. So I'm going to use the shortcut this time. Control-Shift-R is what I've defined. By the way, if you haven't seen me do this before, worth knowing, Edit, Preferences, Shortcuts. This is where we define shortcuts. If I type Roman into the box, you'll see that I've in fact defined 2 shortcuts for it, Control-Shift-R and Control-Alt-R. So I'm going to go back to my note, Control. This time I'll use Control-Alt-R. That's actually what I normally use. And now I can enter a second one, and this is going to be G Control:1. Okay, so now I've showed 2 different Roman numerals, right? And automatic placement already positioned them decently for me. However, and for my money, this is probably good enough because it was really easy to do this. Now, maybe I want to fiddle with the alignment on this so the G is kind of off to the side. So I can take this thing and I can say I want to right align it. And now the 1 lines up with the V. So I could do that and have it align better and maybe call it done. But we all, well, not all, but if you do this sort of stuff a lot, you know that there's a bracket that gets used. It's sort of this weird, it looks kind of like you're doing long division or something. It's this brackety looking thing. So it's possible to add that bracket as a line. And so I've actually created, if I go to my editing workspace, I've created a custom line that's set up that way. But you don't need the fancy, and I need to open my palette. Oops, not the inspector, but the palette. Actually, I need the inspector too. So in my special annotations palette, I've created a version. I've actually created 2 versions of it. One of them's just text. And so one of them, I just created text using Unicode characters that are line drawing characters. But I like my line version better. What I can do is select a range of notes I want that shape to apply to, and then just click that line. And there it is. Now, this isn't positioned correctly. I need it to be here, except I need it to not be pushing the Roman numerals down. So I'm going to reset that adjustment. Oops, let me just delete that. Because when you reset it, it also flips above the staff. That's the default for lines. I'm going to add it, but now I'm going to turn off automatic placement. Disable auto place here in the inspector, just for that line. So I'm going to select the line and disable automatic placement. There's a shortcut for that, by the way, already defined, and that's equals. So by disabling automatic placement for this, I can move it now without it affecting other things. And now I can position it exactly as I see fit. And again, I can use shift left, shift right to expand this thing. So now I have my bracket the way I want, and then I can use just the left arrow if I want to fine tune where this thing is. Oops, fine tune that handle. So creating that line was a really nice little thing to do. And the way I created it was I added a regular text line from the lines palette, lines, added just a plain text line here, like this line here that doesn't even have any text on it. It's just a plain line. And then I took the line and I added a hook where it says begin hook. I said, yes, please, at a 90-degree angle. And then I also, for the end hook, said, yes, please, 90 degrees. But the end hook, instead of being going down, I want it to go up. So I'm going to enter a negative number for the height. And now I've got myself that. I'm not sure, to be honest, why I created that hook so long in this version. That actually seems too long to me, 3 spaces, but apparently I defined it that way. I think it's because in my style, in my handouts that I use this in, these Roman numerals are also further down below the staff, and those long hooks actually work for me. But whatever, you customize it how you want. And then once you've customized it, you can just Control, Shift, drag that thing to your palette and put it where you want it. So like if I want it before the voltas right there, now I've got one right there before the voltas. So Control Shift Drag is how you can take elements that you've customized in your score and add them to a custom palette. But since I already have that in my annotations palette, I don't need it here. So I'm going to get rid of it. I'm going to right click it and say delete. And it will say, do you want to really delete it or just hide it? If I say hide it, it's still there. It's here under more. So maybe I'll do that in case I decide I want it there after all. So that's the process. And so hopefully, if that went by a little too quick to totally follow all the steps, just watch it in the replay, and you should be able to get it from there. All right. So it was the parallel check. The message arrives when you tried to file it, Graham. So I don't know what you mean by file it. You mean when you tried to download it? If you downloading it, that's just a whatever browser you used. Your browser shouldn't care what file that is. So I'm guessing that you need to consult the documentation for your browser to figure out how to download files better, because it shouldn't care what kind of file it is. If you're just trying to download that file, just download it. And maybe you have to right click it. Maybe you tried to click it and your browser, when clicking, tries to run the file rather than download it. So in your browser, maybe you need to right click the file and choose download from a message from a menu. Again, I don't know your browser, so you'll have to learn in your browser how to download a file. But yeah, it probably is download. It's probably right click then download, probably. There you go. All right, so Michael is asking a question: spreading or narrowing the space between adjacent staves. So this is definitely possible. Normally, you shouldn't need to do this. Normally, MuseScore will do this automatically. But I'm gonna load a score. Actually, okay, before I forget, Mom, if you're listening, happy birthday. It's my mother's birthday, and I know she does listen some. And I'm going to load my happy birthday score from a year or two ago, if I can find it, and play it. But if I can't find it, then I won't worry about it. But I think I created it as part of one of these things here, and I should hopefully be able to find it in relatively short order. But if I can't, then I'll just sing. So it looks like there is not a happy birthday in this folder from 2020. Was it in 2021? No, it was definitely longer ago than that. So I can find it on musescore.com. I'm not going to worry about that right now, but I will do it later. So like right now, these things, they're not crashing into each other. If I try to add, say, a dynamic marking below this B here, it's going to create its own space for it, right? If I go to the dynamics palette and add a dynamic there, boom, notice it opened up space automatically. So in most cases, you shouldn't need to do this. But there can be exceptions. Like if I add a dynamic here, the thing is, technically, it added a tiny bit of space, but it's also not clear which staff that applied to. Now, for piano, of course, it doesn't matter because it applies to both. But if this was two separate instruments, like for an ensemble, now it looks like that pianissimo is applying to the bottom staff as opposed to the top staff. And the same can be true with like lyrics or articulations. It could be the case that even though there's no out and out collisions, it can be a little unclear which staff it applies to just because of the way things are overlapping. So you'll go to the breaks and spacers palette and add a spacer. So this first one here, if I hover over it, says staff spacer down. That's the one I want. I select the top staff and put staff spacer down, and then I can drag it. Oh, right now it's not showing on the screen because I'm dragging it down. It's not showing on the screen because I turned off in this score unprintable elements, which is what that is. But if I turn them on again, now you'll see what the spacer actually looks like. It looks like that. So when I double click this thing and drag it up and down, it adds space. So you add it to whichever staff needs the space. So in this case, the pianissimo here, triple P, was added to the top staff, but it didn't quite allocate enough space to avoid confusion. So I'm going to go ahead and add that staff spacer down and then size it accordingly. If I had something different going on, like let's do another example here where this note here, I'm going to flip it stem. No, I'm not going to flip it stem. I'm just going to move it up an octave. If I've decided that I don't like how, what the hell? Oh, that's the tenuto marking. That's a terrible location for it. Let's move it manually. I shouldn't have had to do that. If I've decided that I want more space because I don't like these stems overlapping like that, again, I want to ask myself which staff, whose fault is it that happened, and I'm going to add my spacer to that staff. So it's the bottom staff's fault that there's some kind of collision here. So I'm going to add my spacer to that one. So I'm going to use the staff spacer up from the bottom staff, and then the same thing. Drag it up until I have enough space. Does it actually matter which of the spacers used? No, they do the same thing. It mostly has to do with what happens if the score layout changes and that's no longer a collision, or that collision is to a different staff. So that's like, for instance, a better example would have been if instead of this note here, I had it below the staff and decided that collision, let me get rid of this. And let's get rid of all of this stuff here. And I've decided that this note, even though it's not literally colliding with this staff, that I don't like it there. I want there to be more space. Well, it's this measure's fault that it's crowded. It's not this measure's fault that it's crowded. It's this measure's fault that it's crowded. This time it's on two different systems. And so I want to add the staff spacer down to the top staff and space it. That way, even if the layout changes, and so this isn't the measure right below this one anymore, because the layout might change, right? Later on, this might be the last measure of a system, and now there's some different measure below it. Actually, there isn't, because I didn't put the break where I should have. But the point is, if the layout ever changes in such a way, I'll put a break here this time. Now, this measure is causing a problem in a different spot, but it's still this measure's fault. So add a spacer to the measure that's creating the problem. That way, even if the layout changes later, the spacer continues to do the right thing. So, oh, actually, Happy Birthday is in the public domain. As of about 2 years ago. That was, at least in the United States, that was a big deal. Happy Birthday finally entered the public domain about 2 years ago. So since it came up again, Happy Birthday. I'm going to get this thing because, by gosh, I can. Happy Birthday, Sabatella. So yeah, about about 2 years ago, it finally, after all these years, after all the legal controversies about whether a copyright on a different song called Good Morning to You should also apply to Happy Birthday to You, and whether the date of publication, there were all these controversies that kept Happy Birthday under copyright that finally got settled in court about 2 years ago. Might have been 3, might have been 5, might have been 1. I got a terrible sense of time. But in any case, Happy Birthday is now public domain. So I can now get my Happy Birthday arrangement, there it is, that I did in 2020 and play this. So Mom, if you're listening, here we go. Happy birthday, Mom. I'll talk to you later. So, there you go. 2016. Thanks. That's so 6 years ago, almost 6 years ago. Seems like just yesterday, but yeah, it's definitely a recent development. That's why any TV shows or movies that you see in the United States that were made in the United States, when it's someone's birthday, they almost never sing them happy birthday. They sing for He's a Jolly Good Fellow, because that's public domain. And then no one wanted to have to pay the royalties or get licensed, because it's difficult to get a license. To do an audio recording of a song, there's no hoops to jump through. It's an automatic process. You just fill out you fill out one form, and you can record someone else's song for an audio recording. But to do a video that uses someone else's music, you need explicit permission, and it's a complicated process of contacting the copyright owner and negotiating the rate and all this, and no one wants to go through it. So until 2016, no one sang Happy Birthday in movies. They sang for He's a Jolly Good Fellow is the thing. That's kind of the 555 phone number of music. So that's also a thing, right? They never use real phone numbers in movies. It's always something starting with 555, so that it doesn't turn out to be someone's real phone number. Okay, so did I miss other questions? Is the question. Spreading space, I see that one. Key signature creation, I see that. I see the French questions. So again, for Graham, hopefully you can figure that out. And for Peter, as far as the if someone were to modify that plugin, I actually don't know, but I'm going to guess. I'm going to undo all these changes because I don't want to ruin the score. Actually, I'm just going to close it. I'm going to guess that if I entered a triplet here, if I do this and run that plugin, plugins, notes, count note beats, it's just going to do the math, and it's going to say 3.33 and 3.67. Ooh, look at that. It doesn't even round. It just gives you lots of decimal places. So yeah, someone could take that plugin and tweak it to, and in fact, I might be able to even show you how to do that. Plugins, plugin creator, and then if I load that, I don't think there's a way to access that plugin directly, but if I hit this open icon here, no, open. Maybe I have to go file open. Okay, whatever. Countnotebeats.qml. So I don't know how to use the plugin creator. I guess I accidentally closed the window, but there it is. The plugin window shows you the plugin, and you can edit it if you know. Essentially, JavaScript is really it's not literally JavaScript. It's this thing called QML, but it's essentially JavaScript as far as the syntax of things. So it is possible to go in here and look at the code here and try to figure out, wow, what is all this stuff? It handles grace notes and other things too. Not sure what all that's about, but somewhere in here there must be the calculation where it actually does the math, and that looks like that's probably somewhere around here. It's calculating some math and creating some text, and so somewhere around line 360 something is where you would change the text to say, oh, if if the beat is 0.5, change the text to and if the beat is 0.33, change it to E, or whatever you want it to change it to. So yeah, if and you don't have to know a ton of programming to pull this off. You don't have to know the whole plugin. You just have to be able to look at this line of code. And I know enough code that I was able to find this surprisingly quickly. I'm surprised actually at how quickly I found that line of code, but I'm quite sure that that's the line, that is the right line, and that it's these couple of lines of code that I would need to fiddle with, and that if I did that, it would do the right thing. So what does notes to sum with swing? So I'm not sure exactly what you're asking, Dennis, about notes and swing, but I can tell you that if I enter some eighth notes into, let me enter that again, and then I'm gonna, I think, wrap up because I think I've caught up. If I enter some notes into my score and play them, they're just straight eighth notes. Oh, I guess maybe the question has to do with the plugin, but then let's find out. My guess is it's not even going to understand that there was swing. So if I play this, they're straight eighth notes, right? If I now enter from the text palette the swing text, now they're going to be swung eighth notes. But notationally speaking, they're still eighth notes. Only the playback was tweaked. So I'm going to guess if I run that plugin, I'm going to get the same thing. Yeah, I still just get, and I still get 1.5. So if I was able to do the math really quick and figure out how to be text plus B, yeah, somehow if I was able to do the math quickly enough in my head to figure out how to rearrange this, but you all don't want to see me do math and programming on this. I actually did that for one Café very early on. I actually fixed a bug live during the Café. Ryan, you had a question about multiple endings. Did you already ask it and I missed it? I'll try to scroll and find it. And if so, I'm happy to answer it. If not, ask it real quick before I sign off. But let's see, Ryan, question about multiple endings. Yeah, so I feel like maybe you haven't asked it yet. So if you get to ask it in the next couple of seconds, I will try my best to answer. But I'm not seeing it in the chat here. So I will just add in a multiple ending, and so you can see how it works. If I want a multiple ending over two measures, and that's a common question that people have, select the measures first, then click the ending you want. If you've made a mistake and entered the ending on only one measure, and you then change your mind and say you want it on two, select it, and then I think dragging doesn't work. It just changes the length of that ending. So I'll press Control-R to reset it. Instead, Shift right arrow extends a measure at a time. Shift left arrow contracts a measure at a time. And then if you want to change the actual behavior of that, you come over to the inspector. And this text here, begin text, you can make it say first instead of 1. And then if you want it to work the first, second, and third time, you'd say 1, 2, 3 here. So where it says text is what controls the text that appears in the ending. The repeat list controls the actual behavior. So I don't know, maybe that answered the question. And if not, try posting it later somewhere. Just post it into the conversation space. I'm going to go a little slower, try one more time. I'm looking to see if I see a question from Ryan. Not seeing a Ryan. So yeah, what might have happened is if you tried to post a link, links don't post. So, and that would also tell me that you're better off posting it in the if you try posting the conversation space in the community, it will be better. So yeah, I think I would have to see your score to understand what went wrong. So go ahead and post your score to the conversation, or better yet, post it to the support forum. You'll get an almost instant reply. There's a ton of people who know how to debug problems with repeats. Probably you didn't set the repeat count on the measure properly, or you didn't set the repeat list on the volta properly, but would have to see your score to know. So I recommend the support forum on MuseScore.org. I might have said com, but it's org. Support forum on MuseScore.org, usually within minutes, like before I even hang up here. If you posted your question right now, this very second, probably by the time this theme music ends, you would have an answer, probably. Not that you can post it that quick, but I'm just saying it really is that fast. So, but in either case, I'll need to know we'll need to see the score to answer. So posting to MuseScore.org, the support forum is the way to go. So thanks everyone for being here for the MuseScore Cafe. This has been Marc Sabatella with Mastering MuseScore in my Ask Me Anything session. And we got to pretty much everything we were able to get to here, other than Ryan's question where, frankly, I need a score to be able to understand why it didn't work. But usually that's the process. Set the text, set the repeat list, set the repeat count on the measure that has the repeat sign on it. Those are the 3 steps you need to follow. So, and if it didn't work, we need to see the score. So every month we do one of these Ask Me Anything sessions. And if you have questions that need me to see your score, post them in advance to the community. So I've posted the link to the community. Join the community if you haven't already. It's free. Also go up at the top of this chat. You'll see where my school the link is posted there, and this is where my online courses are, and they are fantastic resources for learning MuseScore, for learning music notation, for learning music theory, learning harmony, learning counterpoint, everything about learning music you can get from my school, and I'm continually adding new info. So please check it out, support what I'm doing here, and I will see you all next time. Next week I'll be back with some particular topic. Tomorrow I'll be back with the music masterclass. So see you all next time.